My name is Ryan Parker. I'm a 34-year-old sports marketing executive living in New York City. And until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Every morning, I'd grab my usual black coffee from the corner deli on West 47th Street, walk past the towering glass buildings of Midtown Manhattan, and head into the offices of Premier Sports Marketing, one of the most prestigious agencies in the country. For 8 years, I'd been their go-to guy for tennis sponsorships, the one who landed deals with rising stars and secured partnerships that made headlines in Sports Illustrated. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. My client roster included 3 top 20 WTA players and 2 promising ATP newcomers. I'd built relationships that took years to cultivate, spending countless hours at tournaments from Indian Wells to the US Open, shaking hands, making connections, and turning potential into profit. My boss, Marcus Wellington, a sharp-suited, silver-haired man in his 50s, used to call me his golden boy. He'd pat me on the shoulder after particularly successful deals and say, "Ryan, you're the future of this company." That future felt real when I moved into my 1-bedroom apartment overlooking Central Park, a place I could barely afford even with my 6-figure salary. The rent was astronomical, but the view of the park's green canopy stretching toward the Hudson River made every dollar worth it. I'd wake up early on weekends, lace up my running shoes, and jog through the park, dreaming about the day I'd make partner, maybe even start my own agency. But success in New York comes with a price, and mine was isolation. While my college friends back in Ohio were getting married and starting families, I was boarding red-eye flights to European tournaments, living out of hotels and treating dating apps like another business transaction. My parents would call from Cleveland, asking when I was coming home for dinner, and I'd promise next month while already booking my flight to Roland-Garros. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my career helping athletes achieve their dreams, while my own personal life remained on permanent hold. Marcus would often joke that I was married to the job, and I'd laugh along, not realizing how prophetic those words would become. Little did I know that my unwavering loyalty to Premier Sports Marketing was about to be tested in ways I never imagined, and that a simple text message during one of tennis's most prestigious tournaments would change everything. The warning signs started appearing 6 months before Paris, but I was too focused on my work to see them clearly. It began with small changes. Marcus would suddenly end phone calls when I walked into his office, or he'd attend client meetings without inviting me, meetings I'd normally lead. When I asked about it, he'd flash that politician's smile and say something about streamlining processes or exploring new directions. The first real red flag came in March when I discovered that Alexei Volkov, a rising Russian player I'd been courting for 2 years, had signed with a competing agency, Apex Sports Management. I'd taken Alexei to dinner at 11 Madison Park just 2 weeks prior, and he'd practically shaken hands on joining Premier. When I confronted Marcus about losing the deal, he shrugged and said, "Win some, lose some, Ryan. That's the business." But it wasn't just one lost client. Over the next few months, 3 more prospects I'd been developing suddenly went elsewhere. Each time, Marcus had an excuse: budget constraints, strategic shifts, bad timing. Each time, my commission checks got smaller, and each time I worked harder to compensate, staying late, making more calls, attending more events. The atmosphere in the office grew tense. Jessica, our receptionist, started avoiding eye contact. Tom from accounting would change the subject whenever I asked about quarterly numbers. Even Sarah, my closest colleague and the only person who knew about my crush on the barista at our usual lunch spot, began taking her breaks at different times. The worst part was the isolation. In an industry built on relationships, I suddenly felt like an outsider at my own company. During team meetings, Marcus would discuss future initiatives and strategic partnerships while barely acknowledging my presence. When I suggested new approaches or shared insights from recent tournaments, he'd nod politely and then immediately shift the conversation to someone else's input. My confidence, once unshakable, began to crack. I started second-guessing every email, every client interaction, every strategic decision. Was I losing my touch? Has the industry passed me by? At 34, was I already becoming obsolete in a field that celebrated youth and innovation? The breaking point should have been obvious when Marcus hired Brad Morrison, a 26-year-old hotshot from UCLA with perfect hair and an MBA from Wharton, as a junior associate in April. Brad got the corner office I'd been promised, the company, credit card I'd been requesting, and most importantly, access to the client relationships I'd spent years building. But even then, I convinced myself it was temporary, that hard work and loyalty would eventually pay off. By May, the humiliation became impossible to ignore. The final straw came during our annual company retreat in the Hamptons, a weekend that used to be my favorite time of the year. Previous retreats had been celebrations of my achievements, with Marcus publicly praising my deals and other colleagues seeking my advice over cocktails on the beach. This year felt different from the moment I arrived. The usual room assignments had changed, and I found myself relegated to the cramped servants' quarters above the garage while Brad got the oceanfront suite I'd occupied for the past 3 years. During the welcome dinner, Marcus stood up to toast the future leaders of Premier Sports Marketing and spent 15 minutes praising Brad's fresh perspective and innovative approaches without mentioning my name once. The other colleagues noticed. I caught them whispering in corners, their conversations stopping abruptly when I approached. Susan from PR actually winced when she saw me, as if my presence made her uncomfortable. Even the catered staff seemed to treat me differently, serving me last and barely making eye contact. But the real knife twist came during Saturday's presentation session. I'd prepared a comprehensive analysis of emerging markets in Asian tennis, complete with projected revenues and potential client acquisitions. I'd spent weeks researching, creating slides, and practicing my delivery. When I stood up to present, Marcus interrupted me after barely 2 minutes. "Ryan, this is all very thorough," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But I think we need to focus on more immediate opportunities. Brad, why don't you share your thoughts on European expansion?" The room went silent. 20 pairs of eyes watched as I stood there, my laptop still open, my carefully prepared presentation abandoned. Brad smoothly took my place, presenting ideas. That sounded suspiciously similar to strategies I'd outlined in internal memos months earlier. He received enthusiastic applause. That night, while everyone else celebrated on the beach with champagne and lobster rolls, I sat alone in my cramped room, staring at my phone and wondering if I should start updating my LinkedIn profile. The walls felt like they were closing in, and for the first time in my career, I questioned whether I belonged in this industry at all. The worst part wasn't the professional rejection. It was the personal betrayal. These people had been my family for 8 years. I'd attended their weddings, celebrated their promotions, and worked weekends to ensure their success. Now they looked at me like I was a stranger, or worse, like I was already gone. The trip to Paris for Roland-Garros in early June was supposed to be my redemption. I'd booked the flight with my own money after Marcus forgot to approve my travel expenses, determined to prove my worth by securing at least one major client signing during the tournament. I packed my best suits, printed business cards on premium cardstock, and practiced my elevator pitch until it was flawless. What I didn't expect was to find myself sitting in the VIP section of Court Philippe Chatrier, next to Catherine Morrison, the founder and CEO of Apex Sports Management, the very company that had been poaching my clients. She was a sharp, elegant woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and an unmistakable presence. I recognized her immediately from industry magazines, but she had no idea who I was. "Beautiful match," she said during a changeover, nodding toward the baseline where 2 rising stars were battling for a spot in the quarterfinals. "Absolutely," I replied, trying to keep my voice casual. "Though I think the winner's backhand needs work if she wants to compete at the next level." Catherine turned to look at me with genuine interest. "You have a good eye. Are you in the business?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced down and felt my world collapse. The message was from Marcus. "Ryan, effective immediately, your employment with Premier Sports Marketing is terminated. Security will pack your office. Don't return to the building. HR will contact you about final paperwork." That was it. 8 years of loyalty, dedication, and success dismissed in a text message that took less than 10 seconds to read. No phone call, no explanation, no courtesy of an in-person conversation. Just cold, brutal rejection delivered while I sat 4,000 miles away from home watching tennis at one of the sport's most prestigious venues. My hands started shaking. Catherine noticed my reaction and asked if everything was okay, but I couldn't speak. The words stuck in my throat as the reality hit me. I was unemployed, sitting next to my former boss's biggest competitor, with no warning and no plan. But then, something clicked. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was 8 years of suppressed frustration, or maybe it was just the cosmic irony of the situation. I looked at Catherine Morrison and realized that sometimes the universe provides exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. If you're rooting for someone who's about to turn their biggest professional disaster into their greatest opportunity, hit that subscribe button, because Ryan's comeback story is just getting started. Actually, I said, turning to face Catherine Morrison fully, I was just fired via text message about 30 seconds ago from Premier Sports Marketing. And yes, I'm very much in the business. Catherine's eyebrows raised in surprise, then her expression shifted to something between sympathy and curiosity. Marcus Wellington's company? That's unprofessional even by industry standards. For the next hour as we watched the match unfold on the red clay, I found myself telling Catherine everything. About the clients I'd developed who were mysteriously poached by other agencies. About Brad Morrison and his sudden promotion to handle my accounts. About 8 years of building relationships only to be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. Catherine listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that revealed just how much she understood about the inner workings of our industry. Ryan, she said as the match concluded, I've been watching Premier's moves for months. They've been hemorrhaging talent and clients, and frankly, I've been wondering when Marcus would start making desperate decisions. It sounds like you were collateral damage in a much bigger problem. She handed me her business card, thick, elegant cardstock with embossed lettering. I'm flying back to New York tomorrow. Have dinner with me Thursday night. I have a proposition. The rest of my time in Paris passed in a surreal haze. Instead of networking desperately at tournament events, I found myself walking along the Seine, processing what had happened and what might come next. I called my parents in Cleveland, and for the first time in years, my father's voice carried genuine concern rather than polite interest in my career updates. Son, he said, maybe this is the push you needed. You've been running on someone else's treadmill for too long. Back in New York, I spent Tuesday and Wednesday in my apartment, alternating between rage and relief. The rage was obvious. 8 years of loyalty rewarded with a text message dismissal. But the relief surprised me. For the first time since college, I wasn't constantly checking my phone for Marcus's approval or stressing about office politics. I also started digging. If Catherine was right about Premier having bigger problems, I wanted to understand what I'd really been a part of. I reached out to former colleagues who'd left the company, asking casual questions about their experiences. The patterns that emerged were troubling. Questionable expense reports, client contracts with unusual terms, and a consistent trend of promising young executives being pushed out just before they could demand partnership consideration. The restaurant Catherine chose was Gramercy Tavern, intimate, sophisticated, and the kind of place where serious business gets done over exceptional wine. She arrived precisely on time, wearing a navy blazer that spoke of quiet confidence rather than flashy success. We ordered, made small talk about the tennis season, and then she got straight to the point. I've done my homework on you, Ryan, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Your client retention rate at Premier was 94% over 8 years. Your revenue generation increased every single year until this past one. And according to 3 different players I spoke with this week, you're the most trusted agent they've ever worked with. I opened the folder to find detailed analyses of my career performance, testimonials from former clients, and what appeared to be a comprehensive business plan. How did you? I've been planning to approach you for 6 months, Catherine interrupted. Marcus is firing you just accelerated my timeline. I want you to head up Apex's new East Coast tennis division, full partnership track, equity participation, and complete autonomy over your client relationships. The offer was extraordinary, a base salary 40% higher than what I'd been making at Premier, plus performance bonuses that could potentially triple my income. But more importantly, Catherine was offering something Marcus never had: respect, trust, and the opportunity to build something meaningful. There's one condition, she continued. I need you to help me understand what's really happening at Premier. Something doesn't add up about their recent moves, and I suspect there's more going on than simple mismanagement. Over the next 3 hours, I shared everything I'd observed and discovered. Catherine took notes, asked probing questions, and gradually painted a picture that made my stomach turn. Premier wasn't just struggling. They appeared to be operating some kind of elaborate shell game, moving money between accounts, inflating client contracts, and possibly defrauding both athletes and sponsors. If I'm right, Catherine said as we finished dessert, Marcus didn't fire you because of performance issues. He fired you because you were getting too close to seeing the bigger picture. Your integrity made you a liability. Walking home through Union Square, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Excitement about the future. For 8 years I'd been trying to fit into Marcus's vision of success. Now I had the chance to define success for myself, to build relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation, and to prove that doing business the right way could be more profitable than cutting corners. The next morning, I called Catherine and accepted her offer. 3 weeks into my new position at Apex, the other shoe dropped in spectacular fashion. I was working late in my new office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Madison Square Garden, when Catherine knocked on my door with a grim expression and a stack of documents. "We have a problem," she said, closing the door behind her. "Remember those financial irregularities we discussed? I hired a forensic accountant to dig deeper into Premier's public filings. What she found is bigger than we imagined. The documents revealed a sophisticated fraud scheme that had been operating for at least 3 years. Marcus had been inflating sponsorship deals, reporting fictional revenue to investors, and skimming money from athlete endorsement contracts. The total estimated theft exceeded $12 million, affecting not just corporate sponsors, but the careers and financial futures of dozens of young athletes. Your former client Alexei Volkov," Catherine continued. "His signing bonus from Premier was supposed to be $500,000. He only received $150,000. Marcus pocketed the difference and reported the full amount to the sponsors. My blood ran cold. I thought about all the young players I'd worked with, athletes from modest backgrounds who trusted me to secure their financial futures. How many of them had been stolen while I unknowingly facilitated the process?" "There's more," Catherine said. "The FBI is already investigating. They've been building a case for months and they want to talk to you. Your firing wasn't just about protecting Marcus from scrutiny. It was about eliminating a witness who might have eventually connected the dots." The next morning, I found myself in a sterile FBI conference room with 2 agents and a prosecutor, walking them through 8 years of interactions, transactions, and observations. Every detail mattered. The mysterious client departures, the unexplained budget changes, the way Marcus had increasingly isolated me from financial discussions. "Mr. Parker," Agent Martinez said, "your testimony is crucial, but we need you to know that this might require you to go public, possibly testify in court. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Alexei, about the other young athletes who'd trusted me, about the integrity that had driven my entire career. "What do you need me to do?" 2 months later, I stood outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, watching Marcus Wellington being led away in handcuffs after his arraignment. The media circus was overwhelming. Cameras, reporters, questions shouted from every direction. But as I looked at the courthouse steps, I felt something I hadn't experienced since that text message in Paris. Justice. The aftermath of Marcus's arrest unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of justice. Within 48 hours of the FBI raid on Premier Sports Marketing, the company's assets were frozen, their offices sealed, and their remaining staff, including Brad Morrison, found themselves unemployed and under federal investigation. Marcus himself faced a litany of charges: wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and breach of fiduciary duty. His legal team, a parade of expensive suits from white shoe Manhattan firms, tried everything from claiming he was a scapegoat to arguing that the athletes had been adequately compensated despite the stolen funds. None of it worked. The trial lasted 6 weeks and I testified for 3 grueling days. Defense attorneys tried to paint me as a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged contracts, falsified reports. Every piece of the puzzle fit together perfectly. When the jury delivered their verdict, guilty on all counts, Marcus's face went ashen. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison and ordered full restitution to the defrauded athletes. But the real victory wasn't Marcus's downfall. It was what happened to the athletes he'd stolen from. Through a combination of federal restitution orders, civil settlements, and a victim compensation fund that Catherine helped establish, Every single athlete received not just their stolen money, but additional damages for lost opportunities and career disruption. Alexei Volkov, who had become the unofficial spokesperson for the victims, called me personally after receiving his settlement check. "Ryan," he said in his thick Russian accent, "I never blamed you. I knew your heart was good. Thank you for fighting for us." Brad Morrison's story became a cautionary tale whispered throughout the industry. Despite his MBA and connections, no legitimate agency would touch him after his association with Premier's fraud. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in suburban New Jersey. His corner office and company credit card were nothing but expensive memories. The industry itself began implementing new oversight measures, mandatory financial audits, athlete advocacy, programs, and whistleblower protections. Catherine was invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee about reform measures, and she brought me along as her expert witness on athlete representation. As for Premier Sports Marketing, the company was dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay restitution. The gleaming Manhattan offices where I'd spent 8 years of my life were converted into luxury condominiums. Sometimes I walk past the building and remember the young, ambitious man who used to grab coffee on West 47th Street, believing that loyalty and hard work were always rewarded. He wasn't wrong. They just weren't rewarded the way he expected. 2 years later, I'm standing on the balcony of my new apartment in Brooklyn Heights, watching the sun set over Manhattan's skyline. The view is different from my old Central Park place. Instead of looking down at manicured lawns and jogging paths, I see the raw energy of the harbor, the Statue of Liberty in the distance, and the honest bustle of a neighborhood where people build real lives instead of just careers. Apex Sports Management has become the most respected tennis agency on the East Coast, and my division has grown from a one-man operation to a team of 12 dedicated professionals. We represent 43 players across the ATP and WTA tours, but more importantly, we've revolutionized how athletes are protected and supported. Every contract includes mandatory financial transparency clauses, every deal is reviewed by independent legal counsel, and every athlete has access to financial literacy training. The industry recognition has been gratifying. Sports Business Journal named me Executive of the Year, and Tennis Industry Magazine featured our agency model as the gold standard for ethical representation. But the real satisfaction comes from the relationships. Players trust us not just with their careers but with their dreams, their families' futures, their post-tennis aspirations. Last month I attended Alexei Volkov's wedding in Moscow. He's now ranked 14th in the world and just signed a multi-million-dollar endorsement deal with Nike. All legitimate, all transparent, all fairly distributed. During his reception speech, he mentioned how the darkest period of his career led to the most important lesson: surrounding yourself with people who value your success as much as their own. My personal life has found balance too. I'm dating Sarah Chen, a sports psychologist who works with Olympic athletes. We met at a conference on mental health in professional sports, bonded over our shared commitment to athlete welfare, and discovered that building something meaningful together is far more rewarding than climbing corporate ladders alone. She understands the demands of my work because she shares the same passion for helping athletes thrive. My parents visited last month for the first time since I moved to Brooklyn. Over dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Carroll Gardens, my father looked at me with something I'd rarely seen before: pride mixed with relief. "You look happy, son," he said. "Really happy. Like you're finally living your own life instead of someone else's version of it." The irony isn't lost on me that losing my job was the best thing that ever happened to my career. Sometimes the universe's greatest gifts come disguised as our worst disasters. As I finish telling you Ryan's story, I'm reminded that some of life's most powerful transformations begin with what feels like complete destruction. That text message in Paris, the one that shattered 8 years of carefully built expectations, wasn't the end of Ryan's career. It was the beginning of his authentic professional life. Ryan's journey from betrayed employee to industry leader teaches us that integrity isn't just a nice-to-have quality in business. It's the foundation upon which real success is built. When Marcus chose fraud over fairness, when he prioritized short-term profits over long-term relationships, when he treated loyal employees as disposable assets, he didn't just destroy his own future. He created the conditions for someone better. to take his place. The most beautiful part of Ryan's story isn't the dramatic courtroom victory or the financial vindication of the defrauded athletes. It's the quiet satisfaction of building something that matters, of creating an organization where young tennis players can pursue their dreams without fear of exploitation, where hard work is genuinely rewarded, and where success is measured, not just in revenue but in lives positively impacted. Today, Ryan Parker's name appears on business cards as partner and director of East Coast operations at Apex Sports Management. But more importantly, it appears in the acknowledgement sections of athletes' autobiographies, in thank you speeches at tennis award ceremonies, and in the stories that young players tell about the agent who changed their lives by simply treating them with honesty and respect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so successful at what you do that your former tormentors become irrelevant to your story. Thank you for staying with Ryan's journey until the very end. It means everything to know that stories of resilience, integrity, and authentic success still resonate in a world that often celebrates the wrong values. If you loved Ryan's incredible comeback story, please hit that like button, leave a comment telling us what part inspired you most, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of people who turned their darkest moments into their greatest triumphs. What kind of story do you want to see next? More workplace justice, family drama with shocking twists, relationship betrayals that led to amazing new beginnings? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. We read every single one and use your ideas to create the content you're passionate about. And if Ryan's story inspired you, share this video with someone who needs to hear that setbacks aren't endings. They're setups for incredible comebacks.